Welcome to the Mike Francesa Podcast on the BetRivers Network. Brought to you, of course, by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. A Nick Pacer preview as we get ready to open up the second round of the playoffs with the Knicks at the Garden tonight. A happy Garden yesterday with the Rangers opening up their Carolina series with a victory. If you heard the podcast I did with Joe Micheletti, he talked about the goaltending. He was prescient there because you can see if there's an Achilles, it's in that goaltending for Carolina. So watch that during this series. Could be the difference for the Rangers. Now, the Knicks survived about as contentious and competitive a six-game series as I've ever seen. You could not have a closer one. I mean, the scoring was like 1 point difference between the two teams. 5 of the 6 games could have gone either way. You had some wonderful performances. I mean, after game 1 and 2, Brunson was bad. After games 1 and 2, Brunson was off the charts good. I was amazed what they got out of Embiid, considering he wasn't 50%. Maxey obviously emerged as a big star for the future. And it's very easy to see what Philly needs to go forward. Healthy Embiid and a third scorer. Now we get to this round. We told you the first round was going to be tough. I thought it would go 7. It could have easily gone 7. It was as contentious, like I said, a 6-game series as I've ever seen. Now a very different series in round 2 against Indiana. You have Cleveland, which had to survive against Orlando, got down big in the first half yesterday. I thought they'd come back. I didn't think Orlando would have what it took, even in the second half of that game, to put away a veteran team, even a disjointed veteran team, a really messy veteran team, missing a player. I still thought they'd find a way to win, and they did. Boston's going to have an easy time with Cleveland. They're going to coast into the finals, in the conference finals. They'll be waiting for the winner of the series. The Knicks, unlike the Sixers series, are a heavy favorite in this series. And I can understand why. Because of the way they played this year. And Indiana got a huge break. They wouldn't have beat a healthy Milwaukee, but they got a half of Milwaukee. Okay? Doesn't give Doc any excuses. He did a lousy job in Milwaukee, but the bottom line is they weren't winning with the guys they had. Now a very, very different series in every way. Pressure on the Knicks to win. That first, a lot of people thought the Knicks could go out to the Sixers, and they could have. The Sixers with Embiid were 31-8 this year. They were the second best team in the conference with Embiid healthy. He wasn't healthy though, and it was a grueling series. Now, Knicks will be expected to. This will be a disappointment if the Knicks lose this series. Now, this city is counting on the Knicks taking it to the next round and at least battling the Celtics. They don't have to beat the Celtics, but they got to battle them. And if they beat them, well, hey, it's going to be a joyous late May. But they need to advance through this round. They're a heavy favorite to advance through this round. They are better than a 2-1 favorite to win the series. They have home court starting this evening. Halliburton I doubt he's out. They said game time decision. He's going to play. I always expect these guys to play. He's got back spasms. So those can be tricky. Some games they don't bother you during the game. Some games they bother you a lot during the game. So it's very hard to say. Like we said, this is a very different kind of matchup. One that is in a lot of ways more conducive. First of all, the Knicks' biggest edge in this series going in, let's look big picture first. The Knicks' biggest edge in this series going in is they are going to kill the Pacers on the backboards. They are the best offensive rebounding team in the league. They are relentless rebounding. And if Indiana, which is superbly coached, their coach is a superb coach. He's not a good coach. He's a very, very good coach. So Tibbs has got his match and more on that bench with this guy. Rick Carlisle's a hell of a coach. Always has been. Now, if Indiana chooses to double Brunson a lot, which I think they want to, that's even going to affect their rebounding more. That's going to make it even harder for them to get any help or any matchups or anything they want on those backboards. Now, how does Indiana want to play? They want to play as fast as they possibly can because they have better depth. That's the way they play. The Knicks want to choose their spots and run when it's, there for them. Run when Hart grabs the ball off the backboard, run off a turnover, get the easy basket. But the Knicks don't want to run a lot in the fourth quarters of these games, especially. But I think a lot more than you think in these games. The Knicks are going to try and slow these games down. The slower the pace is better for the Knicks, not better for the Pacers. The biggest matchup problem the Knicks have is not going to be, I don't think, Siakam. I think it's going to be Turner, because guys who can go out and play the pick and pop game hurt the Knicks. And this is going to be tricky because you could see here, especially if Siakam goes to a post-up game. Let's say OG plays his old buddy, and they're supposedly very close friends. He plays his old buddy to start in the series, and Siakam's posted him up. And they're getting hurt by Turner in the pick and pop game. Well, the logical thing is take Hartenstein and put him on Siakam and let OG go out and play against Turner. Makes plenty of sense. You could see that. But then Siakam can also change that up. The bottom line is the Knick big, especially when it's Hartenstein and Robinson, don't really want to go out there and guard those guys. It's not their strength. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially when Robinson's on the floor, how they play that. Now, they're going to get more from their bench, especially since Bogdanovich is out. The Knicks bench, he's not going, unless it's extreme, he's not going past Achua and McBride. That's it. Other than, of course, Robinson. I'm counting that as a two-headed center. I'm not counting that, okay? I'm counting that as a two-headed center. If Robinson's not healthy, then Achua plays a lot of minutes. If Robinson's healthy, Achua plays very few minutes. He might see a few more minutes in this series because of what he can give you in versatility defensively. That could happen. But that's as far as they're going. Now, they're going to get more off the bench. Obi Toppin at 21 points. Remember him in their clinching win. McConnell is that gnat of a pain in the neck of a backup point guard who could cause a lot of trouble. And you have a terrific point guard matchup, although Brunson doesn't usually guard Halliburton. Dante does. So you're going to get a lot of different things here, back and forth. Hey, the biggest problem that Indiana has is twofold. One, what can they possibly do with the Knicks' enormous rebounding edge on the backboards? How can they negate that, especially the offensive baskets, that the offensive rebounds that turn into baskets? Number one. Number two, how do they deal with what Brunson has become, which is a 35-point scorer a night in these games? Not a 30-point scorer, a 35-point scorer in these games. How do you keep him from killing you? Well, you got to switch people up on him. You got to double team him. You got to come at him with different looks, just like Philly did. But after game two, Brunson and the Knicks figured it out. And after game two, Philly had no answer for Brunson. First 2 games, they made him look really sick. The last 4 games, he made them look really sick. So those are the 2 biggest things. They know how relentless the Knicks are going to be. They know that the Knicks, see, with the Knicks, there's not one thing that you say, if we take this away, we win. You're not going to take Brunson away from scoring his points because he's going to score his points. The best thing you can do is increase his volume to where the volume turns into a negative. The Knicks obviously are going to shoot a lot of threes. They know that. But the Knicks can win when they don't hit their threes, especially if they're going to have a huge advantage on the boards. They bring an incredible intensity to the game. They bring an enormous versatility to the game. They can use Hart and OG and even Dante in so many different configurations. It gives them a versatility that is enormous, and they have no problem coming from behind in games. That doesn't bother them. They're a very hard team to knock off their equilibrium. They're going to keep coming at you. The way that you're going to beat them is when you have more talent. And Indiana doesn't have more talent. Indiana's got a very good player in Siakam. Legitimate scorer, legitimate player. They have a very good, classy point guard, different than Brunson, but a very classy point guard who can get his 20 points and his 15 assists and play a beautiful floor game. And they try to piece it together with a whole bunch of different people and their bench from there, including using Turner's ability to step out and play the pick and pop game and step out and take the three-pointer and hurt you. He can do that. Plus, they're going to be deeper off the bench. They're going to use more players. Will they wear the Knicks down? Probably not. You know, that's the amazing thing. Now, the scheduling in this series is pretty much every other day, but it doesn't bother the Knicks Iron Men. They're Iron Men. They basically go, you know, Hart can go 48 minutes. Does he want to play Brunson as many minutes as he had to play him in the Sixers series? No, the Sixers series got to a point where this series will not get. In the Sixers series, both coaches got to the point where they were not comfortable having their number one off the floor. The Knicks did not like having Brunson off the floor, and they didn't want to have Embiid off the floor at all. They couldn't deal with the Knicks when they had Embiid off the floor. They got killed. So you don't have that in this series. First of all, Indiana's not going to be as reliant at all. They're going to be far less reliant on two players than Philly was. Philly was completely reliant on two players for almost every game of the series. I told you the best thing that happened to the Knicks in that series was that Buddy Hield didn't get going until Game 6. That could have been him the whole series. And if it was, that was going to be a pain in the neck. Because that guy, if you remember him from his days from Oklahoma on down, he can fill it up from three. He can get as hot as he got in Game 6. And he could have been putting up 15 to 20 points in limited minutes every game. It didn't happen. They got so disgusted with him the first couple of games, they benched him for games. What happened was in Game 6, they were desperate, and they took a shot that he'd hit his first shot. He hit his first, hit his second, his third, his fourth, his fifth. You know, he was on fire. That could have been like that the whole game, the whole series. That would have been a big problem if it was. They don't have that now. Yeah, listen, they got guys who are going to score some points. They have guys who are going to fill up their stat box, but not like Embiid. They're not going to get hit with 40s and 50s in this series. As they got hit with a 50, they got hit with a 46. They're not going to get hit with those games in this series. But Indiana, conversely, doesn't want to get hit with 50s from Brunson in the series. The thing that jumps out on the page for me is the Knicks went to one level with Hart. They went to another level with OG. When they have OG playing major minutes, they are a completely different team. They are a team that is above what Indiana is. The Knicks are the better team here. If both teams play their A games, the Knicks win. The Knicks don't have to overachieve to win this series. They don't have to do anything unusual to win this series. And I have to be frank with you, I don't think this series is going to go 7 games. I'd like to be bold enough to say 5, but I'll say 6 just because I have a healthy respect for a couple of their players and for their coach. So I'll go Knicks in 6. I will be surprised if this series goes 7 games. And I would be bitterly disappointed if the Knicks lost the series. This series should not be anything close to what that last series was. That last series was as tough a struggle as you will ever get in a first-round series. That was a great series. This series, I doubt, will have games that live up to that. If they do, I'd be stunned. These games are going to be higher scoring, absolutely. Indiana wants to play pedal to the metal. They want to play fast. They're not a good defensive team. They can score. They can score the ball. The Knicks are a good defensive team, and they are a great effort team, and they are a great rebounding team. And they have no problem leaving Hart, OG, Brunson on the floor for 45 or more minutes. They don't care if they go 48 Hart, 45 OG, 45 Brunson. They don't like to play Brunson 45. I understand that. But he can do it. And Hart can play the whole game and give you, his typical. He and OG had an incredible series against the Sixers on both ends of the floor with the effort, the plays they made, the rebounding, everything, the follow-ups, the drives to the basket. I mean, just incredible stuff. This will be a lot less intense. I don't think it'll have the edginess that the last series had. I don't think there'll be that kind of tangible nastiness that there was in that Sixers series. But don't act like I've already seen a couple of people pick Indiana to win the series. I'm very surprised they did. Because I think the way this matches up, I don't think it doesn't. I don't see how Indy has enough answers, to be honest with you. For the Knick rebounding, the Knick effort, what the Knicks are with a healthy OG and Brunson, I don't see how they have enough answers. They would have to get they'd have to get an incredible performance from their bench, which I think their bench is a plus for them. And they would have to get a big series out of Turner from the perimeter. I mean, to where he becomes a nightmare. Could he become a problem? Yes, he will be a problem. There'll be times you're saying, man, what are we going to do to shut him down? That will happen. And Halliburton and Siakam are good offensive players. Do not take anything away from who they are. But I don't see you go with the defensive team in the playoffs. You go with the team that controls the pace in the playoffs. And more than anything else, you go with the team that controls the backboards in the playoffs. And the Knicks will control the backboards in these games, or that will be a stunning achievement for Indiana. They will control the backboards every game in the series, or this will be a big surprise. Indiana's a bad rebounding team. The Knicks are a terrific in the rebounding team and an insanely good offensive rebounding team. That's going to be a big problem for Indiana. Big problem. There'll be times Indiana gets on fire and knocks down a bunch of shots, and they might win a game or two, but I don't see them winning the series. Knicks deserve to be the favorite they are. I think I'll go Knicks in 6. Like I said, I'm almost Knicks in 5, but I'll go Knicks in 6 just for the sake of it. Now, let me tell you about a new little wrinkle from the BetRivers folks. NBA playoffs first basket bet and get. Think you know who's going to set the tone for the game? Make the bet at BetRivers and you'll pick up an extra bonus with the first bucket bet and get. Place a wager on who will make the first basket of any NBA game, and when you do, BetRivers will give you a profit boost to use on another bet. See the BetRivers app for full details on the first bucket bet and get. Got it? So, who's going to come out of the box and hit the first shot? Well, if you do, you can pick up some cash. So go to the BetRivers app for all of your wagering needs and check out their bet and get promotion for these NBA playoffs. Now, elsewhere, going around the NBA a little bit before I get to a couple other things. Were you surprised that Minnesota won the first game of the series against Denver? Denver has as a champion, they do have almost a very cavalier attitude early in these series. I think they found out something about Minnesota in game 1. Okay, I think they found out something. Would I be overly concerned? Now, Minnesota has shown that they are going to be a different team in the playoffs than maybe some people thought. A lot of people, including me, thought Phoenix was going to give them a really tough time, and Phoenix embarrassed all of us. I thought Phoenix was a rough matchup for them. But Denver is a championship team for a reason, and I think they'll bounce back. I saw that they were actually underdog for the series now, and I thought that was surprising after the first game because I expect them to even things up this evening. I'd be surprised if they don't. T-Wolves are good. No one's taking anything away from them, but they're playing a championship team that I think will get through the series. Celtics series, give me a break. Just question how many games you think the Cavaliers who aren't healthy, the Cavaliers who were life and death to get through the first round. They did that. They didn't embarrass themselves by losing Game 7 to an Orlando team that wasn't ready to win in the playoffs, despite some very good individual performances. I think if the Cavs win a game, that would be a lot. They probably will because the Celtics have a habit of, not showing up once in a while. Sometimes at home, too. But I don't expect anything out of Cleveland in that series. The Maverick and the Thunder. Now, a big part of this is going to be and this is where you get into the iffy part here. Is Luka's leg a big problem? Or not a big problem in this series? He made it seem after Game 3 that it was a big problem. He clearly is having a lot of trouble from the perimeter. He's really shot miserably from 3. That figures to be a long series. You got to like a lot of things about the Thunder. Their youth isn't one of them right now. I mean, they're still learning on this curve. But again, how healthy, without Donzik being Donzik, they're not going to win. And I think that puts a big question mark there. If he's healthy, I think they win the series. If he's not, I don't think they do. So I don't know what to make with his legs. So I would stay clear of that series from a series performance and just, deal with it game to game, because I just don't know how healthy he is. He made it seem, in what I saw, he made it seem like he was hurting pretty badly, but that he was going to tough it out. Now, you see, I can't stand Durant. I think he kills teams. I can't stand Harden. I think he kills teams. I mean, I've always felt that way. It's going to be interesting to see. You like a lot of things about the Thunder. See if they're ready to grow up. This will be a big series for them. It'd be a big learning experience for them one way or the other. But again, a lot of it's going to revolve around what you're going to get from Luka in the series. He has to be himself. Otherwise, I think it would be very, very tough. The Cavs, if they win a game, that would be maximum. I couldn't see them winning 2 in the series. And like I said, I think the Knicks will win in 6 games. I mentioned at the tail end of doing the podcast with Joe yesterday, Micheletti, the Derby. Derby got a lot of attention because of the very, very close finish. You don't usually see a Derby that has nose finishes. It doesn't happen. And you can make excuses for the second and third place finishes because they got compromised on their trips. There's no question about it. The winner got an incredibly good ride. See, he was a horse that didn't look good enough, except in the race where he ran on a sealed track and he won by 8. He freaked. I thought he would be closer to the pace. He wasn't. Give the jock credit for that, and give the jock credit for cutting the corner, getting the jump on the competition, getting the inside route, which is incredibly advantageous, cutting the corner and getting a 2-length lead and then holding on for dear life. It was a classic Derby winning ride, a great ride, one for the books, one that will be examined and will be mentioned and lauded for years and years to come. It was that good. It was absolutely that good. Very, very impressive performance by the jock. Now, sounds like Mystic Dan is thinking of going to the Preakness. You see, I think we're coming upon a time where they're going to change the Triple Crown. I don't want them to, but it's become a very hard deal for the Preakness to sell because they still won't know for a couple of days whether or not the winner of the Derby is going to the Preakness. Nobody else in the Derby right now is headed to the Preakness because they don't run horses anymore that quickly. The classic thing right now is you could have written the words for Chad Brown. Hey, I'm going to take Sierra Leone back to Saratoga and get him ready for the Belmont. Why would he bother to run his horse? First of all, he never runs his horses. They don't run horses ever, except in the Triple Crown, that far apart. They cycle their horses to run every 8 weeks. They'll run them a little earlier than that if they have to, but they really want to run them every 6 to 8 weeks apart. And what you get is when you get a classic older stake horse, he runs basically 5 times in the year. He picks his big spots, and that's it. As an older horse, he doesn't grind out races. They don't do that anymore. That's not how horse races are run. That's not how horses are trained anymore, top horses. So most of the big horses that aren't going elsewhere chase money. The Japanese horses are going back to Japan. Both of them availed themselves very well. The third the horse that finished third, Forever Young, was the best horse in the race. He's going back to Japan. He'll chase a lot of money. There's a lot of money to be running around the world. There's a lot of money in Japan. There's money in Hong Kong. There's money in the Middle East. There's money everywhere. You can come back here and run. You'll probably see him in the Breeders' Cup. I would be surprised if you don't see him in the Classic. I'm sure you will. He's a really nice horse. Sierra Leone is a dead closer who had the inside post, who had to make a 10-wide move. Did that move cost him ground? Yes. Could he be good enough to beat that field that way? Absolutely. Did he? No. Did he also veer in the stretch? Yes, he's got a habit of doing that. He came in on the Japanese horse 2 or 3 times. The Japanese horse got a tough trip. He had Sierra Leone leaning on him from the 16th pole, and he still was there right at the wire. I mean, just nose apart. Just really terrific. Sierra Leone ran a really good race. Should be the favorite. He'll be the favorite in the Belmont Stakes, barring somebody freaking in the Preakness and then going in let's say one of these Baffert horses freaks in the Preakness, wins by 10, and then goes to the Belmont. He might be the favorite, but that not happening. Sierra Leone would be the favorite in the Preakness, in the Belmont. A couple of these horses had no chance. Anna Marie, who is a legitimate closer, got destroyed. Just destroyed. Got the nightmare trip of all time. Now he'll wait for the Belmont. He'll be tough in the Belmont too. That's where he's evidently headed. As far as Mystic Dan, they'll let the horse tell him in a couple of days. That group of owners sounds like they want to go to try the Triple Crown, but their trainer's going to have to tell them that the horse is doing great, came back great, is eating up, couldn't be doing better, is bouncing around the stall. If you get anything but that, they're not going to run in the Preakness. They're the only one with an incentive to run in the Preakness. Now you got a bunch of new shooters in the Preakness. You got Baffert bringing in a couple of his horses that couldn't run in the Derby because he's banned. So you have Muth is going to run in the Preakness. You got Imagination's going to run in the Preakness. You got a couple others that have been waiting, Wine Steward, and a couple other ones that are waiting to run in the Preakness. So you'll have probably 8 or 9 horses and Mystic Dan. But let's say Mystic Dan doesn't go. That race has nothing to sell you. It's not the Kentucky Derby, and it doesn't have a Triple Crown element to it. So this is happening so often now that with the change of the Belmont this year, because they're rebuilding Belmont Park, there is no Belmont this year. So the Belmont is being run, as everyone knows. If you're a race fan, you know this already. If not, you might not, that they're running the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga in a special 4-day meet in June. It's going to be great for Saratoga. The place is going to be sold out. It's going to be packed. The place is crazy. They're running 17 stakes over 4 days. It's going to be a great thing for the city. It's going to be wonderful. They're running it at a distance that is suitable to current modern horses and to sires. The Belmont Stakes at 1.5 miles is not a sire-making race. The Belmont Stakes at 1.25 miles over the Saratoga track is a sire-making race. There's a lot of incentive to run in that race. It'll draw a very good field, including some of the Derby horses that had tough trips or didn't finish up, and including Sierra Leone, who's already pointing for that race. This, I believe, happening this year and next year as Belmont is being turned into a winter track, then Aqueduct is being sold to the airport. And they'll run in Belmont, and then they'll run in Saratoga. That'll be it. This next 2 years, I believe, will lead to the final changing of the distances and the dates of the Triple Crown. I believe you will have the Derby the first Saturday in May, as always. You will have the Preakness will be run in June, and the Belmont will be run probably in July. That will probably be the new schedule. May, June, July. Might be 4 weeks apart, might be 5 weeks apart. And the Belmont will only be 1.25 miles. That will be the modernization of the Triple Crown. This change for the next 2 years will be the impetus, I think, that will get that done. They've been trying to get it done, a lot of people, for a long time. I'm not a big fan of it because it takes all the history out of. I like the history of racing. But just like baseball can't go back to Ruth's and put Ruth's game back together. You can't put every team east of St. Louis and can't put every team playing day games and traveling by train and playing 154 games. You now have a modern schedule with a modern baseball, with modernized baseball equipment and modernized rules, and 162 games, and travel all over the country, and different schedule, and night games, and everything else. So the game has changed dramatically from when Ruth hit his home runs. So there's no connection to Ruth's game and the game today anyway. Well, that's the same thing I think that horse racing has to deal with. And eventually that will be, because there is no marketability anymore for the Triple Crown, and there is no marketability for the Preakness, which is at a racetrack that's not doing well anyway. So it is not working from them anyway, because you don't even automatically get the Derby winner anymore into the Derby. And you don't get anybody else chase. You used to have horses that which run all 3 races. That doesn't happen anymore because there's no advantage to it. So this change this year, which was done to allow them to rebuild Belmont into a winter track, this change, I think, is what will create the impetus for the modern Triple Crown. And what would even make it more likely to happen is if Mystic Stand doesn't go to the Preakness, because then you don't have any horses from the Derby in the Preakness, and you have no talk of a Triple Crown. And the idea of not even having a whisper of a Triple Crown kills racing at this time of year. Absolutely kills them. Because their sport, other than the Breeders' Cup, which is not as big as the Derby anyway, their sport lives on these dates where America tunes in to see whether a horse can become that Iron Man, that special horse that can do this special 3-race thing. It's not going to be the same as the old horses did it. We know that. Things change. Techniques change. Everything about games change. They modernize. I fought it for a long time. I don't think you can keep fighting it anymore. I think it's going to happen. A couple of thoughts on the baseball. It was a productive weekend for the Yankees, obviously, against the Tigers. They're going about their business in a good division, what looks like a good division, because the Red Sox are, playing good baseball. And Tampa, which has gotten off to a sluggish start for Tampa, okay? For them, it's a sluggish start. They'll, with their sweep of the Mets, they now are a game under 500. But Toronto's in last place at 3 under. The Red Sox are 3 over. Baltimore's in first place. The Yankees find themselves a game behind, 2 in the loss. It's going to be a very interesting division. There's no question. It's going to be a good division. Tampa's going to stay in there. They obviously have had a lot of issues with their pitching. They have had pitchers injured. They have also allowed more home runs than any team in baseball. And they've had some players get off to horrendous starts, which is why they're a game under 500. They could be a lot worse. So the Yankees sitting where they are right now, 23-13, have to be very content with that. And considering how things are going right now, I think everything is where they hoped it would be. Obviously a lot will depend on the health of certain pitchers and whether or not they will get them back this year. And also the endurance of other pitchers. But they still will have the ability to go out and add when they have to. But they've gotten the start they wanted. And, having Soto hit the ground as he did and just become so comfortable with New York right from day one, which is something that does not happen to guys historically. Let's be honest. We all know that. Most of the guys who come into this town who are looking to prove something, either they're looking for that huge contract or they come with the big reputation and they try to show they can do it here. A lot of them struggle to do it here, as we know. He hasn't. He has hit the ground running, and it hasn't been an issue for a day. And who knows? Maybe it won't be an issue for the entire season. Maybe he's not going to hit a big slump. His approach to the plate is one of incredible consistency. It really is. Now, conversely, the Mets had a tough time in Tampa. That's fine. They've had a tough time over the last 2 weeks. They haven't played well. The fact that Diaz gave up a couple of home runs, hey, it was going to take him a little while to get back to where he is. I don't think that he's anything to worry about. All right, so he gave up some long balls. Well, that's fine. So he doesn't have the velocity you want him to have yet. That's fine. It's going to take him a while. When you miss a year, I don't care who you are, there's going to be a curve that has to be met. So I think that should have been expected. I don't think it's anything to be upset about. Now, Lindor got off to this horrific start. He has picked it up of late. When you look at it right now, I understand he's not hitting for average or anything, but he has more RBIs than Alonso has. And what has happened here is quietly, or not so quietly, Alonso has gone through a really tough stretch. It's the first time I've seen him actually, he wears his emotions pretty much on his sleeve, but he has looked overly frustrated. And you don't usually see him where you think he's overmatched. He has really struggled of late. I mean, you're talking about him now going for a decent amount of at-bats and having some really ugly numbers. I mean, you're talking about 50, 60 at-bats now. I think he's won for his last 28 with like 9 strikeouts. He obviously, early in the season, he got some very big hits for them, including that game that we keep highlighting, that Tiger game, in the second game of that doubleheader, which was very important for them. And the bottom line is, this is a pressurized year for Alonso in a lot of ways. There's a lot riding on his performance. There's a lot riding on what's going to happen in his future and everything else. This is now a long slump for him. And with the catcher out, who is one of the bigger bats in the lineup, and Lindor still trying to find himself from the left side, having Alonso fall apart like this is a very, very tough thing for the Mets. So it's not anything where you're going to react in any special way, but it does bear watching because it's not now a couple of games. He has hit a really nasty skid here for a legitimate period of time. And you wonder when he's coming out of it because it has, it's not a few at bats. It's over. I looked at it yesterday. He's like, let me quote him exactly for you so that I give you the exact at bats, but it is not anything pretty by any stretch after an 0 for 5 yesterday. He is 1 for his last 26 with no homers and 2 RBIs and 8 strikeouts. He is 8 for his last 57, which is 140 with a 280 slugging percentage. So he's had 2 home runs over his last 57 at bats and 5 RBIs. And he's hit 140 over his last 30 games. He's hit 198, and his slugging numbers for his last 7 games, he's slugged under 100. So he has gone into a major funk here, and this lineup can't withstand that, especially when Lindor hasn't. Lindor's hitting 207. He has started to come out of it. He's not a problem at all from the right side. From the left side, he's started to come out of it. I mean, he's got 6 home runs, and he's got more RBIs. He's got 20 RBIs, and, that's more than Alonso has right now. Alonso, from where he's supposed to be, is not anywhere near there right now, and the Mets obviously having trouble. Now, their pitching has been good except for 2 things. The Mets walk more batters than anybody, and they can't throw anybody out stealing. So they allow a parade around the bases. Has got to stop. They had not given up any home runs. Their pitchers have not given up a lot of hits. Most of their starting pitchers, other than Hauser, have been very good for the most part. But they can't throw any runners out, and they walk the ballpark. And a lot of games, they don't score early in these games. They've had rallies late in games. You got to give them credit for that. But they can't survive with a Lindor still struggling. Now, he's started to show you some power. If you go over Lindor's last, number of games, he's knocking in runs. He had 4 RBIs. I was at that game. He came off the bench, had a 2-run double, and then he won the game with a 2-run double. So he had a 4 RBI day, which for Lindor was, a bonanza for him. He, in his last 15 games, has 15 RBIs and 4 homers. That's fine. No one's going to have a problem with that. He's also scored 8 runs. He scored 8 runs, had 4 homers and 15 RBIs, and he's, hit a respectable 260. Nothing great, but he slugged almost 600 during that time. He's had 4 homers and 15 RBIs, which is not bad considering for the season he only has 19 RBIs. So you're getting something out of him, but they need Lindor to get hot. And they need Alonso to snap out of this in a hurry. Because, the season can get away from you very quickly. And you're seeing some things with them. Inability to score early in games. Way too many base on balls allowed. Cannot throw runners out on the base paths. Getting stolen on like crazy. And if you don't have Lindor and Alonso carrying you, it's not going to work. Now, Pete knows what this year's about. Is that something that could compound itself? They have to hope not. I would not get worried yet, but it's worth noting that this has gone on now for a little while, and it needs to come to a sudden halt. Otherwise, the Mets are going to continue to have problems winning games in a division where, believe it or not, some of these teams have surprised. They really have. When you think about it, I mean, I thought Washington, as an example, was going to lose well over 100 games this year. I thought there's no way they don't lose 100 games. Washington's 17-17. They've done a nice job. I mean, Miami never got out of that hole. They opened 0-9. They're 10-26. They're never getting out of the hole. They had a good year last year. This year's a nightmare. And there's not much they can do. But the Mets now are under 500. They got 2 teams running away with the Phillies and Atlanta. The Phillies have gone past Atlanta, as you know. They're 24-11 to Atlanta's 20-12. Both teams are going to win a lot of games. And the Mets want to keep pace. What the Mets can't do is try to make up 10 games in the standings in August, September. It's not going to work. They don't have that kind of team. They have got to keep right there at the 500 mark and then try to make some moves to try to elevate that if they want to try and sneak into the playoffs. That's the only way that would work for them. They can't fall 8-10 games under the 500 mark. It will not work. They will not come back from that. And they obviously need their star players to perform. Lindor's had a rough start. He's now started to come out of it. He has started to show some pop from the left side. It's getting better. There's no reason to believe it won't get better. Alonso now needs to turn it around in a very, very big way. We will do a post-Nick tonight. So you got a good doubleheader tonight with the Knicks, followed by Game 2 in the Denver series, with Denver already down. So, hey, tonight I think you'll see the Denver A game in Game 2 of that series. So good doubleheader this evening. We'll be on after the Knicks game with the podcast tonight, bringing you what we think will be an interesting second round for the Knicks. As I said, Knicks in 6. I'd be very surprised if they don't advance to play the Celtics. We'll see you later.